The human ship moved through space toward the Krillian fleet like a shark swimming toward a school of fish. Jake stood on the bridge watching the enemy vessels grow larger on the main screen. Up close, they looked even more like living creatures than machines. Their hulls pulsed with what might have been heartbeats. Strange fins and tentacles moved along their sides as if they were swimming through space instead of flying. Amy was at the communication station, trying to make contact with the alien fleet. "No response to our standard diplomatic frequencies," she reported. "But they're definitely scanning us. Their sensor sweeps are aggressive." Captain Pete Rogers, the commander of their ship, looked up from his control panel. "Ambassador, they're launching smaller craft. Looks like boarding ships." Jake nodded. This was what he had expected. The Krillians wouldn't want to talk over radio or video. They would want to meet face to face, to smell fear or the lack of it. That was how predator species worked. "How long until they reach us?" Jake asked. 15 minutes, the captain replied. "Should I prepare defensive measures?" "No," Jake said firmly. "We're going to let them board us, but make sure our own boarding party is ready." Amy looked up from her station. "Jake, are you sure about this? Once we're on their ship, we're completely at their mercy." Jake smiled, the same cold smile that had worried the aliens in the Senate. "Amy, when has any human ever been at anyone's mercy?" The next 15 minutes felt like hours. Jake and Amy prepared for the meeting while the crew got ready for what might become a battle. Jake checked his weapons one more time. Plasma pistol, combat knife, emergency grenades, and a few other tools that might come in handy when dealing with warrior aliens. Amy was dressed in her formal diplomatic outfit, but Jake knew she had just as many weapons hidden under her jacket. She also carried a briefcase full of information about human military history. If they survived the next few hours, she would need it. The sound of metal hitting metal echoed through the ship as the Krillian boarding craft attached to their hull. Jake felt the familiar calm that came over him before dangerous situations. It was the same feeling he'd had before battles as a young Marine, and later as a colonel leading troops into hostile territory. "Remember," he told Amy as they walked toward the airlock, "don't show fear, but don't be too aggressive either. We want them to see us as equals, not prey or threats." The airlock door opened with a hiss of equalizing air pressure. What came through was the stuff of nightmares. The Krillians looked like someone had crossed a giant spider with a suit of armor and then given it too many teeth. They moved on 6 legs that ended in razor-sharp points. Their bodies were covered in plates of natural armor that seemed to shift and change as they moved. And their faces. Jake had seen a lot of scary things in his life, but Krillian faces would give him bad dreams for years. The leader of the boarding party was bigger than the others. Scars covered his armor plates, and when he opened his mouth, Jake could see rows of teeth designed for tearing meat. When he spoke, his words came out as clicks and hisses that the translator had to work hard to turn into human language. "I am Sub-War Chief Claxtor. You will come with us to meet War Chief Scarthel. Any resistance will result in your immediate consumption." Jake stepped forward calmly. "Sub-War Chief, I am Ambassador Jake Morrison of the Human Federation. We're honored to meet with your War Chief." The Krillian's head tilted in what might have been surprise. Most species would have been trembling with fear by now. These two humans just stood there like they were meeting friends at a coffee shop. "You are not afraid," Claxtor observed. It wasn't a question. Amy spoke up. "Should we be?" The sub-war chief studied them for a long moment. His multiple eyes moved independently, examining every detail of the human's appearance and behavior. Jake knew he was probably looking for signs of weakness or deception. "Come," Claxtor finally said. "War Chief Scarthel will decide if you die quickly or slowly." As they were escorted through the connection tunnel to the Krillian ship, Jake noticed that the boarding party stayed farther away from them than they probably did with other species. The Krillians could sense something different about humans, even if they didn't understand what it was yet. The Krillian ship smelled like a combination of rust, oil, and something organic that Jake didn't want to think about too hard. The walls seemed to pulse with their own life, and the floor felt soft under his feet like walking on thick skin. They passed through corridors filled with more Krillian warriors. Each one stopped what they were doing to stare at the humans. Jake could hear them clicking and hissing to each other in their own language. The translators weren't picking up their words, but Jake didn't need translation to understand the tone. Curiosity mixed with anticipation, like hunters discussing interesting prey. Finally, they reached a massive chamber at the heart of the ship. The walls curved up and around like the inside of a giant shell. Weapons and trophies hung from every surface, some of them Jake recognized as pieces of technology from the peaceful alien species. Others looked like they came from creatures he hoped never to meet. At the center of the chamber, on a throne made from what looked like fused bones, sat the largest Krillian Jake had ever imagined. War Chief Scar Thul was easily twice the size of his subordinates, covered in armor plates that had been carved with symbols of victories. When he moved, Jake could hear the soft clicking of weapons hidden all over his body. "So," the war chief said, his voice like grinding metal, "these are the famous weapon carriers. The species too primitive to enter civilized space without their tools of violence." Jake looked up at the massive alien warlord and smiled his most dangerous smile. "War Chief," he said, "we're not here to surrender. We're here to discuss the terms of your withdrawal from our space." The chamber went completely silent. Every Krillian warrior present turned to stare at the two small humans who had just told their supreme leader to retreat. War Chief Scarthul leaned forward on his bone throne, his eyes glowing with what might have been amusement or hunger. "This," he clicked softly, "should be interesting." War Chief Scarthul rose from his bone throne. Standing at his full height, he towered over Jake and Amy like a moving mountain of armor and death. His warriors moved closer, forming a circle around the humans. Jake could smell their anticipation, like animals waiting for feeding time. "You speak of withdrawal," the war chief clicked, his mandibles spreading wide to show rows of teeth. "The Krillians do not withdraw. We advance until there is nothing left to conquer." Jake didn't step back. Instead, he moved forward, closer, to the massive alien. "War Chief, that worked fine when you were fighting species that evolved from prey animals, but you've never fought a species like ours." Amy opened her briefcase and activated a holographic projector. Images filled the air between them and the Krillian leader. Pictures of Earth's history, but not the peaceful parts. These were images of human warfare spanning thousands of years. "This is what we come from," Amy said, her voice steady despite being surrounded by creatures that could tear her apart in seconds. "We didn't evolve from prey species that learned to think. We evolved from pack hunters that learned to use tools." The first image showed ancient human warriors with spears and shields hunting creatures many times their size. The Krillians leaned forward, interested despite themselves. "Your species hunted large prey," Sub-War Chief Claxtor observed. "But these are primitive weapons." Jake smiled. "Keep watching." The images changed, showing human armies with swords and armor, then gunpowder weapons, then mechanized warfare. Tanks rolled across battlefields while aircraft filled the skies above them. The scale of destruction grew with each new picture. "The Battle of Gettysburg," Amy narrated, as images of an ancient human battlefield appeared. 620,000 human soldiers fighting other humans for 3 days. 50,000 casualties. War Chief Scarthul's eyes focused more intently on the display. "Humans fight their own species?" "All the time," Jake confirmed. "We call them civil wars. Some of our bloodiest conflicts have been human against human." The images continued. World War I with its trenches and poison gas. World War II with entire cities reduced to rubble. The space battles during humanity's expansion to the stars, where fleets of ships destroyed each other in the cold vacuum. The Human Centauri War, Amy continued, showing massive explosions in space, lasted 15 years. We fought our own colonies when they tried to declare independence. 47 million casualties before we negotiated a peace treaty. The Krillian warriors were completely quiet now. They had never seen such systematic destruction carried out by a single species against itself. "Why do you show us this?" Scarthul asked. "Do you think to frighten us with images of your primitive conflicts?" Jake stepped even closer to the war chief. Now he was close enough that he could smell the alien scent, like metal and old blood. War Chief, I'm not trying to frighten you. I'm trying to explain why the other species in the Senate carry no weapons, but humans do. Explain. Amy changed the display to show brain scans and evolutionary charts. Every other species in the Galactic Federation evolved from prey animals, creatures that survived by hiding, running, or cooperating. When they developed intelligence, they used it to eliminate conflict from their societies. Jake pointed at his own head. Humans evolved from persistence hunters. We survived by chasing down larger, stronger prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Then we ate it. When we developed intelligence, we used it to become better hunters. The war chief's massive head tilted, studying the humans with new interest. And now? Now we hunt wars, Jake said simply. We study conflict the way your species probably studies their prey. We prepare for battles that may never come. We train for wars against enemies we've never met. Amy activated another section of her display. This one showed human military academies, training facilities, and war colleges. Thousands of humans learning tactics, strategy, and the art of organized violence. Every human child learns basic military skills, she explained. Not because we expect them to become soldiers, but because we expect them to be able to defend themselves if they need to. Sub-War Chief Claxtor clicked thoughtfully. The soft flesh species do not do this? The other species? Jake shook his head. They barely remember what conflict looks like. They've been peaceful so long that they've forgotten how to fight. That's why they don't carry weapons. They literally don't know how to use them anymore. War Chief Scarthul moved closer to the humans, his massive form casting them in shadow. And you think this makes humans dangerous to the Krillian fleets? Jake's smile became predatory. War Chief, I think it makes humans the most dangerous species you've ever encountered, because we understand you. Explain. Amy pulled up new images. These showed Krillian attack patterns from their ancient wars, analyzed through human military intelligence. You're pack hunters, just like humans used to be. You probe for weakness, then strike at vulnerable points. You use fear as a weapon as much as your claws and teeth. Jake nodded. But fear only works on prey species, and humans aren't prey. The war chief was quiet for a long moment, studying the humans with eyes that had seen the destruction of worlds. Around them, his warriors waited for orders that could mean war or peace for the entire galaxy. Show me, Scarthul finally said. What happens when predators fight predators? Jake and Amy looked at each other. This was the moment they had been preparing for since they left Earth. Time to show the galaxy what humans were really capable of. War Chief, Jake said, drawing his plasma pistol in one smooth motion. Let me demonstrate why humans never go anywhere unarmed. The weapon powered up with a soft whine that seemed very loud in the sudden silence of the chamber. Jake held his plasma pistol casually, not pointing it at anyone but making sure everyone could see it. The weapon hummed with barely contained energy. Around the chamber, Krillian warriors tensed, their own natural weapons extending from hidden sheaths in their armor. War Chief Scarthul raised one massive claw and his warriors froze. His eyes never left Jake's face as he studied the human's stance and expression. You draw a weapon in my presence, the war chief observed. This is either great courage or great foolishness. Maybe both, Jake admitted. He pressed a control on the pistol side, and the weapon's energy reading appeared on a small display. The numbers made several Krillian warriors step backward. This is a standard human sidearm. Every diplomat, every merchant, every human civilian carries one. Amy activated her tablet again. War Chief, this weapon can punch through 15 centimeters of hardened battle steel. Our analysis of your armor suggests it would penetrate at least halfway through your natural plating. Scarthul looked down at his own armored chest, then back at the small weapon in Jake's hand. Impressive for such a tiny device, but one small weapon cannot threaten a war fleet. Jake smiled and holstered his pistol. You're right. One weapon can't threaten a fleet, but humans don't carry just one weapon. Amy's fingers danced over her tablet, and new information appeared on the war chief's personal display screens. Technical specifications, ammunition counts, and tactical analyses filled the air around them. Standard human diplomatic mission loadout, Amy explained. Each human carries a plasma sidearm, combat knife, emergency explosives, and electronic warfare devices. Our ship contains enough military hardware to level a city. Sub-War Chief Claxtor moved closer to examine the data. This seems excessive for a diplomatic mission. Not for humans, Jake said. We have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We hope for peaceful negotiations, but we prepare for war. War Chief Scarthul studied the tactical displays with the eye of someone who had conquered worlds. Your weapons are advanced, but my fleet contains 300 warships. Even with superior technology, 2 humans cannot threaten such a force. Jake's expression became serious. War Chief, you're thinking like the other galactic species. You're assuming that what you see is all there is. Amy pulled up new images on her display. These showed human space beyond the diplomatic mission. Hidden bases on asteroids, patrol fleets disguised as merchant vessels, and weapon platforms that looked like communication satellites. The Human Federation sent us here with instructions to establish peaceful relations, Jake explained. But they also sent us with backup plans, lots of backup plans. The images continued. Massive human warships hidden in the outer system, their stealth systems keeping them invisible to normal sensors. Orbital weapons platforms that could bombard surface targets from space, and mobile bases that could launch surprise attacks from seemingly empty space. Your intelligence services are thorough, Scarthul admitted, but even this force would be outnumbered by my fleet. Jake walked closer to the war chief's throne. Now he was standing directly in front of the massive alien, close enough that Scarthul could have killed him with a single swipe of his claws. But Jake didn't seem worried. War Chief, you're still not thinking like a human. You're thinking about the forces you can see. But the deadliest human weapons are the ones you can't see until it's too late. Amy's next display showed something that made even the experienced Krillian warriors shift uncomfortably. Technical specifications for human nuclear weapons, biological warfare agents, and something called planet crackers that could destabilize a world's core. Mutual assured destruction, Amy explained. Humans learned long ago that the best way to prevent total war is to make total war too expensive for anyone to consider. War Chief Scarthul's armor plates shifted as he leaned back in his throne. You would destroy entire worlds to stop us? We would destroy entire systems, Jake said quietly. And then we would hunt down every surviving member of your species, across the galaxy until none remained. Not because we're evil, but because that's what predators do when their pack is threatened. The chamber was so quiet that Jake could hear the organic sounds of the ship's biological systems, hearts beating in the walls, air flowing through living lungs, and the soft whisper of nutrients flowing through veins in the floor. Claxtor clicked nervously. The other species would never permit such violence. Amy smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Sub-War Chief, the other species asked us to be here. They don't understand violence anymore, so they asked the species that does understand it to handle this situation. You speak for the Galactic Senate? Scarthul asked. Jake nodded. In matters of war, yes. They make the laws and build the cities. We protect them from things that can't be reasoned with. The war chief was quiet for several minutes, his alien mind processing what he had learned. Finally, he spoke. What do humans want in exchange for allowing Krillian fleets to withdraw peacefully? Jake and Amy looked at each other. This was the moment they had hoped for but hadn't dared to expect. War Chief, Jake said, we want to offer you something that no one has offered the Krillians in 300 years. What? Amy activated a new display showing star charts and territorial boundaries. A place in the galactic community, not as conquerors but as protectors. Scarthul's eyes widened. Explain. Jake stepped closer to the throne again. The galaxy has been peaceful for so long that it's forgotten there are things in the universe that can't be negotiated with. But humans know about those things, and so do you. On Amy's display, new images appeared. Deep space telescopes showing massive objects moving in the darkness between galaxies, entire star systems going dark without explanation, and ships unlike anything the Krillians or humans had ever built, vast and terrible, and heading toward their galaxy, the Void Devourers. Amy said quietly. Our long-range sensors detected them 6 months ago. They consume everything they encounter. No negotiations, no mercy, no survivors. War Chief Scarthul stood slowly from his throne. His warriors had gone completely still, processing this new information. And you believe the current galactic species cannot defend against such a threat? Jake's smile was grim but genuine. War Chief, the other species don't even believe such threats exist. They think the universe is fundamentally peaceful. They can't imagine something that simply wants to destroy everything it encounters. But humans can imagine this. Humans expect it, Amy corrected. We've been preparing for worst-case scenarios our entire history. The war chief moved to a viewing port and stared out at his fleet. 300 bioships that had been bred for conquest, each one a masterpiece of biological warfare. After a long moment, he turned back to the humans. What do you propose? Jake felt the tension in the chamber shift. They were no longer facing execution. Now they were negotiating. Alliance, he said simply. The galaxy needs protectors who understand violence. The Krillians need a purpose that doesn't involve destroying civilized worlds. And humanity needs allies who can fight when fighting becomes necessary. War Chief Scarthul's mandibles spread, in what might have been a smile. And the weak species would accept Krillian protection? Amy's smile matched Jake's now. War Chief, after today they'll accept any protection they can get. War Chief Scarthul moved around the humans like a predator studying potential prey, but Jake could tell something had changed in the way the massive alien looked at them. There was still danger in his movements, but now there was also curiosity, and something that might have been respect. Tell me about your wars, human Morrison, the war chief commanded. Show me how your species learned to hunt. Jake nodded to Amy, who activated new sections of her holographic display. The images that appeared made even the Krillian warriors lean forward with interest. Ancient human battles filled the air around them. Greeks fighting Persians with bronze weapons. Roman legions conquering most of the known world with discipline and tactical superiority. Medieval knights charging across fields while archers darkened the sky with arrows. This is from our early history, Jake explained. Before we had advanced technology, humans learned to fight with organization and planning. The war chief studied the images of human armies moving in formation. Your warriors show discipline, but these are small conflicts compared to galactic war. Amy smiled grimly and changed the display. Now it showed human warfare from more recent times. Millions of soldiers fighting across continents, fleets of ships battling on vast oceans, and aircraft engaging in complex air battles. The Great War, she said, showing images of trenches and artillery bombardments. 16 million human casualties. We fought for 4 years over territory smaller than a single Krillian hunting ground. Claxtor clicked in what might have been amazement. 16 million of your own species died for such a small prize. And then we did it again 20 years later, Jake added. The Second World War. 70 million casualties that time. We dropped weapons that could destroy entire cities. New images appeared showing the devastation of nuclear warfare. Mushroom, clouds rising over destroyed cities, radiation-scarred landscapes, and the aftermath of humanity's most terrible weapons. War Chief Scarthul was very still now. Your species developed the ability to destroy worlds? We developed the ability to destroy ourselves, Amy corrected, and then we developed the wisdom not to. Most of the time. Jake walked over to one of the viewing ports and looked out at the Krillian fleet. War Chief, your species conquers other species. But humans, we conquer ourselves. Every generation of humans has to overcome the violent instincts of their ancestors while keeping just enough of those instincts to survive. The display changed again, showing modern human society. Cities full of peaceful civilians, children playing in parks, and families living quiet lives. But scattered throughout were images of human soldiers training, human ships patrolling the borders, and human weapons stored in hidden arsenals. This is what humans are now, Amy explained. We live in peace because we're always ready for war. Scarthul turned away from the viewing port. And you believe this makes humans superior to the Krillians? No, Jake said firmly. I believe it makes us similar to the Krillians. You're the only other species we've met that understands that sometimes violence is necessary. The war chief's mandibles spread slightly. Jake was learning to recognize this as a sign of interest or amusement. The difference, Amy continued, is that humans learn to control their violence. We learn to use it only when necessary and to stop using it when the threat is gone. And the Krillians have not learned this? Jake shrugged. You tell me, War Chief. Your fleets could have destroyed those colony worlds already, but instead you're here talking to us. That suggests you understand that not every problem requires total destruction. The War Chief was quiet for a long time. Around them, his warriors waited for orders while the humans stood calmly in the middle of what should have been their execution. Finally, Scarthel spoke. What would this alliance mean for the Krillian people? Amy activated a new display showing detailed plans for integration with galactic society. Hunting preserves on uninhabited worlds for your people to maintain their skills. Military bases, where human and Krillian forces could train together, and most importantly, a purpose. What purpose? Jake pointed to the earlier images of the Void Devourers. Those things are coming whether we want them to or not. The peaceful species can't fight them. They don't even want to believe they exist. But humans and Krillians together, we could build a defense that would make the Devourers think twice about entering this galaxy. War Chief Scarthel moved back to his throne and settled into it slowly. You would trust Krillians to fight beside humans? We would trust Krillians to be Krillians, Jake said. Predators who know how to hunt. We're not asking you to become peaceful. We're asking you to hunt the right prey. The War Chief's laughter was like metal grinding against stone. And if the Krillians refuse this alliance? Amy's expression became very serious. Then we fight. Human fleets against Krillian fleets. It would be the bloodiest war this galaxy has ever seen. And when it was over, neither of our species would be strong enough to face the real threat coming from beyond the stars. But if we accept, Jake's predatory smile returned. Then the void. Devourers are going to learn what happens when two predator species decide to work together instead of fighting each other. War Chief Scarthel stood up again, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. He walked to a wall covered in weapons and trophies from ancient victories. After a moment, he selected a curved blade that gleamed with its own inner light. This belonged to the last war chief who tried to make peace with prey species, he said, showing the weapon to Jake. They betrayed him and had him executed. Jake examined the blade without fear. The difference is that humans aren't prey species. Betray us and we'll hunt you across the galaxy until we find you. But honor an alliance with us and we'll fight beside you until the universe ends. The war chief held out the blade handle first to Jake. Then let us see if predators can truly trust other predators. Jake took the blade and immediately offered it back. War Chief, keep your weapon. But remember that humans offered to share our strength with you instead of using it against you. Scarthel's mandibles spread wide in what was definitely a smile now. Human Morrison, I begin to understand why your species insists on carrying weapons. You think like hunters, even when you speak of peace. Especially when we speak of peace, Amy said. Peace without the ability to defend it is just a waiting period before the next war. The war chief looked around at his assembled warriors, then back at the two humans who had walked into his stronghold, and somehow turned a conquest into a negotiation. Very well, he declared. The Krillian fleets will withdraw from the colony, worlds. But we will not leave this galaxy. We will explore this alliance you propose. Jake felt relief wash over him, but he kept his expression calm. What do you need from us to make this work? A demonstration, Scarthel said. Show my war chiefs how humans fight. Show them that your species is worthy of Krillian respect. Amy was already working on her tablet. We can arrange joint training exercises, human marines against Krillian warriors in controlled combat. And when the Void Devourers arrive, Jake touched his weapon one more time, a gesture that no longer seemed threatening but rather reassuring. When they arrive, War Chief, they're going to discover what happens when humans and Krillians hunt together. Around the chamber, Krillian warriors began clicking and hissing in what Jake was starting to recognize as approval. They might not understand human diplomacy, but they understood human confidence in battle. War Chief Scarthul settled back into his bone throne. "Return to your Senate, human Morrison. Tell them that the Krillians will not attack their worlds, but also tell them that the Krillians will be watching from the shadows, learning about these void devourers you fear." Jake and Amy prepared to leave, but the War Chief spoke again. "One more thing. This weapon permission you humans demand in the Senate meetings. I understand it now. You carry weapons not because you fear the other species, but because you fear what might threaten them." Jake paused at the chamber's entrance. "War Chief, humans have learned that the best way to keep the peace is to be ready for war. Sometimes that means carrying a weapon to a peaceful meeting. Sometimes it means making allies out of enemies. And sometimes," Amy added, "it means teaching a galaxy that has forgotten how to fight that there are still things in the universe worth fighting for." As they left the Krillian flagship, Jake could hear the War Chief speaking to his subordinates in their own language. The translator couldn't handle the rapid clicks and hisses, but Jake didn't need translation to understand the tone. The Krillians were excited. For the first time in centuries, they had found a species that understood them. And for the first time in his life, Jake felt like humanity had found its true purpose in the galaxy. They weren't meant to be the smartest species, or the most peaceful or the most advanced. They were meant to be the guardians, the ones who carried weapons so others didn't have to, the ones who remembered how to fight so others could forget. As their shuttle headed back toward the Senate building, Jake looked out at the stars and wondered what the other galactic species would think when they learned about humanity's new alliance. Would they understand that humans hadn't betrayed the peace? They had just made sure the peace would survive whatever was coming from the dark. The Galactic Senate emergency session was the largest gathering in the building's history. Every species, every faction, every minor diplomatic mission had sent representatives. The great hall buzzed with nervous energy as beings that usually avoided each other found themselves sitting side by side, united by fear and confusion. Jake walked into the chamber with Amy beside him, both still carrying their weapons openly. But now something had changed. Instead of the nervous glances and worried whispers that had followed them before, Jake noticed a different kind of attention. The aliens were watching them with hope, mixed with their fear. Chancellor Morden's crystal form caught the light from dozens of different sources as he called for order. "Representatives of the Galactic Federation, we face an unprecedented situation. The Krillian fleet has withdrawn from our territory without engaging our defense forces." Senator Zixth flowed forward from her platform. "More concerning is that they withdrew only after extended negotiations with the human representatives. We need to understand what agreements were made." Jake stepped up to the speaking platform at the center of the hall. Around him, hundreds of alien beings focused their attention on his words. "Senators, the Krillians have agreed to a temporary ceasefire while we explore the possibility of a formal alliance." The hall erupted in sounds of shock and dismay. Species that hadn't made a loud noise in centuries were chittering, whistling, and humming their distress. Chancellor Morden had to flash his crystal body with bright lights several times to restore order. "Alliance?" Whisperwind pulsed with agitated colors. "Ambassador, the Krillians are a warrior species. They have been the enemies of peaceful civilization for centuries." Amy activated her presentation device. Images appeared in the air above the assembly, showing the tactical situation beyond their galaxy. That was before we knew about the real threat, senators. The images showed the deep space telescope data that had been classified until now. Massive objects moving through the void between galaxies, leaving trails of dead systems behind them. The void devourers were no longer just a theoretical threat. They were a confirmed enemy force heading directly toward the Milky Way. "These entities have consumed 17 galaxies that we know of," Amy explained. "Our analysis suggests they will reach our outer rim worlds within 5 years. A member of the Granite clans, a being that looked like a walking mountain, spoke in a voice like falling rocks. If this threat is real, why have our own sensors not detected it? Jake gestured to the display. Because your sensors are designed to detect peaceful things, ships that follow navigation protocols, energy signatures from normal civilizations, communication signals from friendly species, you're not looking for things that don't want to be found. And humans are? Chancellor Morden asked. Humans are always looking for threats, Amy said. It's how we survived long enough to develop civilization. We assume that somewhere in the dark something dangerous is hunting us. The images changed to show human deep space monitoring stations. Unlike the elegant artistic structures that other species built, human installations looked like fortresses. They were designed to watch for trouble and survive attacks. Senator Zixth rippled with nervous energy. Even if this threat is real, surely it can be reasoned with. All intelligent life seeks survival and prosperity. Jake's expression became grim. Senator, humans used to think that too. Then we met other human tribes who wanted the same resources we did. We learned that intelligence doesn't automatically create peaceful intentions. Amy pulled up new data showing the analysis of void devourer behavior patterns. These entities don't negotiate, don't communicate, and don't leave survivors. They arrive in a system, consume everything that contains useful energy or materials, and move on. Like a plague of locusts, Jake added, but locusts that can travel between stars. The hall was quiet now as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Species that had lived in peace for centuries were trying to understand a threat that existed only to destroy. Whisperwind pulsed with very dim colors. What can be done against such creatures? They can be fought, Jake said firmly. But not by species that have forgotten how to fight. The peaceful civilizations of this galaxy have amazing technology, beautiful art, and brilliant minds. But they don't have weapons or warriors. Amy continued the briefing. The Krillians, however, have both. 300 warships crewed by beings who have spent their entire evolution learning to hunt and kill. Combined with human tactical knowledge and Federation technology, we could build a defense that would make the Devourers look for easier prey. Chancellor Morden's crystal body flickered with complex patterns of light. You're asking us to ally with our ancient enemies to fight enemies we didn't know existed until today. We're asking you to survive, Jake said bluntly. Senators, in 5 years the Void Devourers will arrive whether we're ready or not. The question is whether this galaxy will be defended by a united alliance of species that includes actual warriors, or whether it will be defended by peaceful beings who have to learn how to fight in the few years they have left. A new voice spoke from the back of the hall. One of the younger senators, a being from a species Jake hadn't met before. What guarantees do we have that the Krillians won't simply conquer us after the Devourers are defeated? Jake looked around. The hall had all the watching faces and sensors. These beings were smart enough to build a galactic civilization, but they thought like prey animals. They couldn't understand predator logic. Senator, he said, let me explain how predator species think. Krillians conquer because they need something to hunt. Give them a better target and they'll ignore the smaller prey. Amy activated tactical displays showing the estimated size and power of the Void Devourer forces. The Devourers represent the ultimate hunting challenge, an enemy that will fight back with everything they have. For a warrior species like the Krillians, this isn't just a threat to be stopped. It's the greatest hunt in galactic history. War Chief Scarthul's voice suddenly filled the hall. Jake turned to see that the Krillian leader had activated a communication link from his flagship. Senators of the Federation, the War Chief's translator made his words sound almost polite. Human Morrison speaks truth. The Krillians have no interest in conquering species that offer no challenge. Your worlds are safe because they are weak. Several aliens made offended sounds, but Scarthul continued. The creatures approaching your galaxy, however, represent worthy prey. The Krillians will hunt them for the glory of the kill. The humans will hunt them to protect their allies. Together, we will give these Devourers a war they do not expect. Jake smiled. The War Chief understood exactly what he was saying. The Krillians weren't joining the Federation out of goodness or a desire for peace. They were joining because it gave them access to the biggest, most dangerous hunt they had ever encountered. There's one more thing, Jake said to the assembled senators. This alliance means that humans will need to expand our role in Federation affairs. How so? Chancellor Morden asked. Amy's display showed organizational charts and command structures. Someone needs to coordinate the defense of 47 different worlds with completely different military capabilities. Someone needs to make sure that, when the Devourers arrive, everyone knows their role in the battle. And humans volunteer for this responsibility? Jake nodded. Humans volunteer to do what we've always done. We'll be the ones who carry weapons so you don't have to. We'll be the ones who make the hard choices about violence so you can focus on building and creating. Senator Zixith flowed closer to the speaking platform. And after the threat is ended? What happens to this military alliance then? Jake's smile was gentle but determined. Senator, humans have learned that threats are never really ended. They're just delayed until next time. So we'll stay ready, and we'll keep our weapons, and we'll make sure that the next time something dangerous comes looking for the Federation, it finds Guardians waiting. The vote took 3 hours of debate, but the result was inevitable. When, faced with extinction, even the most peaceful species could understand the need for warriors. As the session ended and the aliens began filing out of the hall, Jake felt Amy touch his arm. Think they'll really trust us? She asked quietly. Jake watched Chancellor Morden speaking urgently with other senior senators, probably planning the integration of human military forces into Federation defense systems. They don't have to trust us, he said. They just have to need us. And right now they need us more than they've ever needed anyone. Outside the Senate building, Krillian ships had taken up positions around the Federation worlds, not as conquerors, but as guards. And, for the first time in galactic history, the peace was protected by those who remembered how to fight.